Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the Vacation Rental Meetup. I think we'll just get started now because we're always running late. I'm just looking, Flo, to see that your camera has just switched off. There you are, you're back in. Perfect. I'm impressed, guys, that you're already sending notes to each other, so that's really good, and you know where the chat button is. Just for the housekeeping, obviously we can't see you, we can't hear you, but we do really like interaction. So using the message button on the chat button on the right hand side is perfect. If you want to add questions, you can put them there, or the section below us, there's a question area there as well. And we will be, we'll keep track of that as the event goes on and make sure that we answer your questions. Okay. I presume, guys, that you can hear us. Can someone just send us a message to let us know that you can hear us okay? Yes, yes, yes. Fantastic. That's good news. Okay, in that case, we'll just get started. So first of all, I want to say welcome to everybody who's come along today. I know we've got some new faces who've come along, which is great, and some regulars who've come back again. So welcome, everybody. For the new faces, just to give you a little bit of background about who we are and what we're doing. This is a vacation rental meetup organised by Bookster. And my name's Kelly. I'm the marketing director for Bookster. And we're a property management software company based in sunny Scotland today. And our goal really is just to help property managers who specialise in holiday rentals. So we offer a whole host of services from the software, lots of tools, channel management, we've got websites, we do SEO, lots of different functionalities to help with. And if you want to talk to us about that at any point, please let me know. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We organise these monthly events. And the entire goal is really to invite experts from across the industry who've got their own areas of expertise to talk about what they know about and how they can help the industry. So today, I'm delighted that Flo has come along to join us from AirDNA. The goal's a little bit selfish, actually. Normally, we talk about a particular topic, but this topic's come about because I found myself looking at data and then not doing anything with it, finding it really interesting, and it was gripping, but not actually taking action. And speaking to some of our clients, speaking to people in the industry, I know that I'm not alone. So when I spoke to Flo, Flo, obviously, as part of AirDNA, provides a lot of market data for the holiday rental industry. They are experts in this particular area. And I thought Flo would be a great person to actually talk about some of the things that we can actually do once we've looked at the data. So he's going to go through real examples today, real bits of data, and talk about actual things that you can do on the back of that. So I think we'll get started. I realise I've skipped through all of my slides, but without actually moving them. So this is the plan, and this is what Florian's going to go through today. So Flo, are you good to start now?
Perfect. So thanks, Kelly, so much. Thanks for inviting me. Hello, everyone. I appreciate you're taking your time. Before I get started, there's a couple of things I wanted to say. First of all, you're not going to come out of this session as a top-notch revenue manager. I don't have the capabilities to turn you into that. We scratch a little bit on the surface on some topics. We go a bit deeper on some others. And the one thing that I thought was really important to highlight is that data in general should help your decision-making process wherever you are in the life cycle of the property that you're dealing with. In some cases, it gives you a clear-cut path and it gives you a real call to action. In others, it, in parentheses, only aids in the experience that you have, the gut feeling that you have. It gives you additional information. And in the examples that I'll share today, for the purpose of this exercise, I try to kind of focus on examples that are a bit more obvious. Unfortunately, it's not always the case, but we'll see them straight away. So I'll jump to my slides. There we go. So AirDNA. So let's start it. Who are we? What do we do? And who do we do it for? So I always like to start with how this company came about, and it's really the classic startup story that Scott Shatford, our CEO based in Denver, he started as an Airbnb manager back in 2013, leading into 2014. And he's a really, really competitive guy. He likes to be the best at everything he does. He's also a numbers guy. And when he started to rent out first his own house while he was traveling the world, he realized there's huge potential in this short-term rental industry. And when he came back, he decided he wants to dive deeper into that. He got his hands on 10 more properties in a very short time frame. And as he was working on these properties and distributing them and marketing them and dealing with guests, he realized that he was missing key information on who he was competing with, how he was doing, what he could do on a day-by-day basis to kind of improve his now flourishing business. And so he started to scrape Airbnb and similar websites to get KPIs such as average daily rate, or to see the occupancy and type of properties that he thought he was competing with. And then he realized that him as a now more successful property manager, that he could share this knowledge with other people in the same situation. Also interesting to know, Scott turned himself within 6 months to the top performing rental agency in Santa Monica from when he started applying data to his business.
Wow.
He wrote a book about it. He became kind of like an internet host, doing several sessions. But then he turned this whole thing into a business. His dad is also into with a background of data analysis, and we started this company in 2014 with very humble beginnings, sending PDF sheets out to anyone who was interested. And we're now a company with 55 employees, with an office in Santa Monica. In Denver is the headquarter, and here in Barcelona, where I'm based, 55 employees, self-funded, no outside funding. And the other thing that I thought was super interesting is we cater to pretty much anyone who's interested in this industry. This could be an owner with one property. This could be a Sonder or a Vacasa with 10,000 or 40,000 properties under management. We deal with universities who want to do impact studies for tourism. We work with investment companies, with global acting real estate companies who want to invest in this industry. So we've got a real big variety of clients, and that's also reflected in our product set, where we have you can go to our website with your credit card and access the tool that we're going to look at today, which is called Market Minder. It's market based. Like I said, credit card, you get a report and access to the tool on a monthly basis. Or you could be an enterprise level client that's using property level performance data because you've got a team of revenue managers working with you. But we keep that aside for today. So, and this is kind of also talking about the agenda that we have today. Like, what we're doing is we help our clients with the initial property selection and the different scenarios that we go into later. Listing optimization, once you've got a property that's up and running, to make sure that it's nicely optimized and performing as good as possible. Dynamic pricing is kind of one of the latest functionalities that we've added, because we realized that automation is the key to being successful in the future. And competitive benchmarking to kind of close the circle of when you initially acquired a property, you manage it, you optimize it, and then at some point you want to look at how am I actually doing compared to similar properties in this industry. Then something else that's really, really important to understand, how do we get our data? When we started in 2014, we had a kind of a developer access to Airbnb that gave us an anonymized reservation data for 50 million reservations. And based on this real reservation data, we built an algorithm that we apply to scraping data. So if you're not familiar with the term scraping data, means there's like a software program that goes out to every listing on Airbnb, on every listing on VRBO, every listing on HomeAway. On a daily basis, we check the calendars, we check the prices, we check the amenities, we check all the information that we can get. And then when we look, for example, at the calendar and we see that a block of 7 days has disappeared from the calendar, we take real reservation data that has trained the algorithm to predict if this is an actual booking or if it's a blocked or if the property has been taken off the market, for example. We've done audits, internal and external audits, which resulted in up to 93% accuracy, which means, will you get into a scenario when you look at our data and you think that's a bit off? That can happen. But the great majority of situations when clients come back to us, also at trade fairs, they love to catch us out. They come to our stand and say, oh, I want to see how good you guys are. And they say, well, pull up that property on this and that island. And then we had, for example, a situation with a property manager in Greece who wanted to see a villa that he was dealing with. And he could actually see that he had in our data the top 2 performing villa in that region. And he said the results are amazingly accurate, but he wasn't aware that he had the top 2 performing villa. So we took at the trade fair a photo of him next to the performance data and said, send that to the owner and tell him how good of a job you're doing. Because I think that's super, super nice to share that information. So to get back to the data quality, we've got 35,000 listings that are plugged into our system from small to medium-sized hosts, 750,000 bookable units that provide us with real and anonymized reservation data. And that then is applied, this logic, to 10 million listings on a global basis, which means all properties on Airbnb, all properties of VRBO, HomeAway on a daily basis. So agenda, I've talked about it earlier. I keep this quick. We look at market analysis and Rentalizer, which means we look at how do you get started. Custom comps, so competitive properties that you can customize. Pacing, which means a look into the future and to see how a market is performing. Dynamic pricing is an algorithm and machine learning intelligence that looks at the market, analyzes on a daily basis all the changes that are happening to then recommend prices again on a daily basis. And benchmarking, like we said, if you want to just look at your property and see how good of a job am I doing, am I being outperformed, am I outperforming the market, and what can I do as a consequence. Be right back. So market comparison. Let's start on a very high level. Let's take the example, you're an investor or you're a property manager who wants to grow your inventory. Now there's some good opportunities in the market because people feel they want to get out of this game due to the crisis in travel, but we all know that this is not going to last forever. So there's some good opportunities out there. So you can, within MarketMinder, use a tool called Market Comparison. You can compare up to 4 markets. And we've got the example here with Santa Monica. We're looking at 2-bedroom and studio apartments in certain postcodes and in this area. And then you get different KPIs. We're looking here just at revenue that helps you understand, okay, you know that in the area of Santa Monica is where you want to invest. And then using this information, I personally would favor the green line. It's fairly obviously the postcode 90401. In Santa Monica, 4 2-bedroom apartments seems to be the most promising from a revenue perspective.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at this, and I'm thinking of a couple of conversations that I've had with some people who are coming to this event today, who are exactly in this position. They're trying to identify where they're going to buy their next selection of properties, or which one of them is actually looking to buy, another one is looking to target owners in certain areas, but didn't know really which area they wanted to be focusing on. So this kind of tool is going to give them that kind of information. It's going to be quite, well, I mean, the example you're given is quite clear cut where an investment should be made.
Exactly. That's because, I mean, that's another scenario when we go to trade fairs or when we talk to clients. Since this topic with data is still fairly new, airlines have been doing it for decades, hotels have been doing it, car rental companies are doing it to optimize their inventory. We're still, even us, I still consider in our baby shoes. But it also has to be said that our industry is incredibly complex compared to the hotel industry with their very comparable rooms, with their star systems. So what we do is, we always say this, we're nowhere near perfect. There's still lots of room that can develop. And at the moment, we're in the situation where we can help someone, even with a lot of experience in this industry, to help in markets that where you lack the experience, or when you want to go to a deeper level of knowledge. And especially now in the situation we're in, it doesn't matter if you've been in this industry for 30 years. It's at the moment fairly difficult to predict the future. And if you have pieces of information that help you, it helps you mitigate your risk and take better decisions. Any particular reason you don't scrape from Booking.com? That's a very good question, Joanne and Tony. Yes, there's a very particular reason. Actually, we've been scraping Booking.com for 2 years now. The problem with them is that they've got the multi-property logic. So they've got, for example, serviced apartments, something that's also started now with Airbnb. That's a real headache for us because we don't see the underlying apartments. We just see one apartment listed, but there might be 10 similar apartments, cookie cutter type below. We've been scraping the data for 2 years. It's been required by our clients. They mentioned this a lot. And we're not yet at a quality level where we're confident to say this is something we want to present to our clients, because we still see that there are results that, just to be frank, don't make much sense to us. And until we're on a level where we say, okay, this is really, really useful and solid data, we're going to keep it to ourselves. It's also on the same note, our tool was never built for a pandemic. Our tool was never built to understand a complete collapse in tourism. And there was one interesting incident that actually prevented the initial planned version of this webinar, because when in the UK the government basically closed down all vacation rentals, our logic initially identified that the market is booming and that all the properties are booked out, which as a consequence for us meant that we had to hold all development on forward-looking projects. We needed to go back into the data, modify the algorithm, apply additional logic, because we were now in a situation where we couldn't go back to historical patterns. And then in these situations, we reached out to our clients and said, hey, listen, this month's data delivery is probably going to take 2 weeks longer. We have to postpone the product that you've subscribed to, or the updates at least, because we're not confident in the quality level. And that's something that it's very, very high on our priority list, that the quality and the accuracy needs to have a certain level to make sure that that our reputation doesn't suffer. Okay, so I'm just reading Sandy's question here. So thanks for being. Oh, hold on. Okay, so we obviously link our Bookster property calendars to Airbnb and behaviour, but any bookings generated in Bookster only show them as blocks. Does this affect the data?
That would be because if you put bookings in as blocks as opposed to as bookings.
Okay. No, it doesn't. Because let's put it this way. Yes, historically, when it would have shown as a block, there was always a bit of a deviation. But that's why we are, like I said, that's why we're applying real reservation data, and that's why we are in parentheses get a 93% accuracy and not 100% accuracy. So there will always be scenarios when you have a lot of owner usage or when you have a lot of blockage that some results might be slightly skewed. But the overall accuracy is still superior to what you have as a gut feeling. But yeah, these scenarios happen, and this is also then sometimes when clients come back to us and say, "Hey, I looked at the data. It's accurate in its consistency, but I think that you're by 15% over calculating." And then we can dive into this and kind of fine tune it. This takes a bit longer. This is not the switch of a button, but this is why we're kind of in a regular feedback loop with our clients and with our partners. If Airbnb puts scraper bot blockers in place, would this affect your data scraping? It would kill us. It would completely kill us. But the thing is, they wouldn't do that because we've got a very good relationship with them. We've got regular meetings with their C-level executives, and they really like what we're doing. And their perspective is that we are helping their partners and their clients to be more professional. So it's not in their interest to stop something. And at the end of the day, all we provide is performance data. There's no GDPR is not being touched. There's no personal information. So anything that helps professionalize this industry is greatly supported. And some of the biggest OTAs are also clients of ours.
Okay, so I'm very conscious of time.
Oh, yeah.
We're on the first slide. So just
okay.
Looking at this slide in particular, what I'm getting from this is this would really help somebody if they're identifying what area they should be thinking about.
Exactly.
If they've got some ideas and perhaps excluding other areas because they can see that they're not performing as well.
Exactly. And then we move on to a tool called Rentalizer, because now that you honed in on an area, ideally you already have 2 or 3 properties in mind. You know the address, but you're still not entirely sure about the potential. So Rentalizer is a tool that you type in an address. Ideally, you should have the street name to make this relevant. But the property itself doesn't even have to be listed as a vacation rental property. So what we do is you give us the address, we look at a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom in a region, and then we look at properties close by with a similar look and feel, in a similar price category, in a similar size from the information that we have about this unit of real estate. So we're looking at properties. We return you with we return the examples that we used to come up and calculate an average, which you then also can link out to and look at on Airbnb or Vrbo. And then we provide with an occupancy preview, average daily rate, and a revenue forecast for the next 12 months. So that gives you a good idea of what this property could perform or would bring in if it were to be listed on the professional OTAs out there.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, and then there's a couple of things in regards to occupancy that we could dive into even more, but you said it, we're on slide 11 out of 33. We're halfway through the webinar. So occupancy, that would be another thing where, I mean, I want to look at what did last 12 months occupancy look like on average. We're showing here 50th percentile in this context means half of the market had this occupancy, and this is all with rollovers. So every point will give you additional information about the revenue, the occupancy, and you can do the same thing for average daily rate and for revenue, for example. So ideally, you've decided now on a property with the help of our data. We want to look at custom comps. I mentioned it earlier. Customized competitive property sets. So what do? We look at it's a similar approach to Rentalizer, but now that we have a specific property in mind, because you uploaded your iCal and your Airbnb ID to our system, we know the property, we have the historical performance, we have the data about it, we know exactly how it's performing, and then we can go out and based on distance, host experience, property quality, size and accommodation, amenities, and further pieces of information, we create a set of comparable properties. We have a proprietary quality score where, based on our opinion and the data that we have, we come up with a set of properties where we say these 10 to 15 properties seem to be fairly similar to the one that you're managing, and these are the KPIs that they produce. Now, because we don't have the feet on the ground, you might even know some of these properties, or you can again click on them, link out, look at the pictures, and decide actually that's a bit too posh, that's a bit too humble. AirDNA might see this as something comparable. I don't agree. Super simple. You just deactivate them. You can click them on and off and kind of further tailor them. And then in a second step, Kelly, you mentioned to me that that hot tubs are a thing that's being discussed. You could, for example, say, well, if I were to compete with properties that have a hot tub, I talked, for example, with a revenue manager out of Prague. They told me that they make notably more revenue with apartments in Prague that have air conditioning, because that attracts guests from North America who have got, and the ones that are traveling to Europe have deeper pockets. AC seems to be the amenity that they need, even though maybe in Prague it's not a real requirement temperature-wise. But they, after realizing this, based on our data, they only focus on properties with AC for that market. There's other filters you can set, size of properties, and so on and so forth, and then create the comp set that you're happy with, and benchmark your property. And that ideally then also gives you an idea if there's any obvious outliers where you say, well, maybe my occupancy is too high compared to others. And that's maybe because my average pricing is a bit too low. So these would be indicators to then say, well, ideally, I increase my rates a bit, lower my occupancy, but overall generate more revenue.
Mm-hmm. There's actually the clients that I was speaking to about hot tubs here in this particular event. So I think this is particularly interesting. So I spoke with one of my friends who was telling me about a stay they were making in Loch Long in Scotland. And I got her to go and get me some prices stay, because she was saying that for a 4-night stay in a lodge with a view over the lake, was £488 for a 3-bedroom. But if you got one with a hot tub, it would be £848 for a 2-bedroom. So you can see it's almost double the price for a much smaller property, but you're paying for that hot tub. So if you're a property owner and you're trying to decide whether or not that's a feature that's going to be good for you, this kind of tool is going to be able to help you make that decision about whether you want to make an upgrade to your property to be able to, you know, have an extra amenity like that. I think it's also useful for cleaning. Am I right? You'd be able to look at cleaning fees.
Exactly, cleaning fees, deposits, and yeah, exactly. So you could, for example, look at amenities in my market, on the market that I'm investigating. What are amenities that are typical? Maybe it gives you an idea that hot tubs are not a thing. So that's an idea to break into. Maybe it would tell you that everyone listening to this webinar now is going out buying a hot tub. And the market is flooded with hot tub cottages, which I doubt. We're not that popular. But it's just, these are these scenarios. And one thing is the gut feeling or something that you heard about. And the other thing is just to have information and be able to say, okay, X amount of properties in my market have a hot tub, and I can actually compare one that hasn't won and that one that hasn't won to then make my decision. Also, actually, something that I forgot to mention, these comp sets, you're probably the first non-AirDNA clients to see them. We're still in beta, so they have not been launched officially. We've just got some key clients who are kind of testing them to get some feedback. So I'm showing you a functionality that's being delivered ideally this quarter. That's definitely we're already a bit late. So if you were to sign up tomorrow to MarketMinder, please don't be surprised if you don't see that functionality yet. Because at the moment, it's basically we're creating a comp set for you, and we realize it needs to be tailored and customizable.
I'm also thinking for that particular area, if you are an agency and you have clients in a certain area, that would be a really useful bit of analysis to understand, you know, building your relationships with your owners to say, you know, a lot of people in your area have got this particular functionality, and as a result, they've been able to increase their price by 50%. This could be something that you would consider doing as well. So there's options there, not only if you are the owner yourself, but also if you're the agency.
It's a very, very typical scenario that agencies sit down with MarketMinder. You might be talking to an owner with fairly unrealistic expectations. They've just invested in this beautiful home. They think this is going to generate X, and maybe you need to keep their feet on the ground. And it's always easier to say, oh, hold on, I've got this tool. I work with a third-party company that specializes in market data. This is not me telling you. This is not me trying to haggle. This is third-party independent data. The same example could be, we had a client from Thailand who connected with us last year, and they said the market on a couple of islands where they manage villas is suffering, and the owners are threatening to move to other agencies, and they needed market data to understand what's going on. And then using MarketMinder, they understood that actually, first of all, the market as overall was suffering, and that they were still outperforming the market. So that helped them to go back to the owner and manage the expectations, made them understand that if they were to change agencies, they would actually be in a worse position. And it's always helpful in these situations to kind of, okay, here's third-party independent information to help guide that conversation. And it also makes you look super, super smart and professional when you have a dashboard, when you can say, okay, Mr. Client or Mr. Owner, let's dive in, let's look at a couple of properties, how they're performing. And ideally that wins you and grows your makes you win and grows your inventory. So there's something wrong with this clock that's ticking way too fast. So these custom comp sets, they will also feed into two functionalities that we've already got in the system: dynamic pricing, we talk about later, and then pacing data, to make this more personalized. If you haven't heard the term pacing before, it's future demand data, rate analysis, and booking trends. So what we're looking at is we're looking at how markets are reacting 6 months into the future. We're looking at booking windows. We see where and when bookings come in and at what rates to ideally help you react to these trends. And then this slide I picked on purpose because if I see this, I fall over backwards. And I think that's one of the examples that you, Kelly, mentioned, is where you look at a graph and you think, yeah, wow, what do I do with this? So I'm not sure if this is the version where I added the arrows. Oh, I did actually. Okay, so to help us orient, and I'll make it easier in a second for us. So this is New Year's and Christmas, where we can see the booked rates, and the blue line is booked listings spike. But I wanted to hone in on this area here, on the left, hold on, you don't see my cursor, on this area here, which is the half term. So if we zoom further in, which you can do here, down here are these two gray buttons which you can slide to just zone in into a position. And then we see the blue line up here, and we see this step. And what this means is that I, on purpose, looked at properties with 5 or 6 properties in Pembrokeshire, because that was a really nice example to spot something that's happening in the market. On the left, we can see the blue line and the yellow bars going hand in hand, where we can see the increase in weekend demand and weekend rates, which is fantastic. And then we see the half-term start. So if anyone who's not from the UK, half-term is the school holidays in autumn. Is that a good way to say it, Kelly?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. And then we see this drop, and I wanted to go further in. So we see here on Sunday, the 25th, where the arrow pointing the average booked rate for these type of properties is 296. Whereas on Wednesday, a couple of days later, it's 50 pounds less, it's 274 pounds. But the thing is, here we see the blue line consistently high, which suggests that there's demand is solid, the demand isn't dropping. So there isn't actually any reason to decrease your rates like this. So if you're from Pembrokeshire and if you've done that, go change that. So that's an example that I wanted to use because it's super obvious that you can spot these things and say, hold on, it's consistent demand. I should keep my rates up. People are booking for, not just for the weekend, they're booking for the week. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to drop these rates because you're missing out on revenue here. Mm-hmm. And then just to kind of compare with last year, I looked at the rates last year where the arrows pointing, that was last year's half term. You see it flat. So it seems that last year, property managers kept their rates up. And then I take the rates of this year, and we see that the booked rates in the turquoise mm-hmm. Line has slightly increased over the weekends, and the Monday to Friday rates are fairly solid, but the available listings are fairly low, which also suggests that properties that are priced higher, probably the nicer properties, they were booked first. They were booked at a stable rate because people said, well, I want to go away. I've got the money. In parentheses, it doesn't matter what it costs, and I want the place that looks nice. But it would still suggest to me that if you've got a mid-sized price or in the medium price range property, that you shouldn't be too conservative on the days from Monday to Friday. And then to add to this, pacing booking trends, we see here three curves, and they're showing bookings on the top that are happening 60 days out, then a bit lower 30 days out, and then 7 days out. So we see in the last 7 days for this very specific market, just for 2 bedrooms, 2-bedroom apartments, we still had 24 bookings come in. So we see that the market hasn't died down. As I said, there's still demand. Demand is fairly consistent. So it doesn't suggest that rates should be dropped, and they should actually be increased. Mm-hmm. But to make this a little bit easier, we've added dynamic pricing. So this is what I mentioned earlier. When you upload your properties, we've got two rate views, a market rate, which is just a generic average price for, in this case, 3 to 4 bedroom unit in Pembrokeshire or property. But then obviously you want it very, very tailored, similar to your com set. We've built a logic that delivers daily rate suggestions based on your custom com set. So that means if you have a 2-bedroom apartment in Girona in Spain, in the city center. You want to understand how do other 2-bedroom apartments in the city center of Girona perform, how they're priced, how they're booked. We look at historical data, which now in some cases obviously it needs to be taken with a good measure of caution, because okay, Robert. Sorry, Robert, you brought me out of context. I see. I'm reading the comments here. No praise just yet. It's not over. So if you've got a 2-bedroom apartment in Girona, rather than doing this manual work and going in and analyzing rates on a daily basis, we've built a logic that's using booking patterns, that looks at location, that looks at historical data, forward data, at book to window, the booking window, and we come up with pricing suggestions on a daily basis. And then I don't know if there's another screenshot. No, there's not. So in here you see it. Maybe Kelly, you can jump on the full screen. Oh, thank you so much. So you can see here. Maybe you can't read the numbers, but you see in red and in green and in blue. Red suggests that our analysis says you might want to drop your rate by the announced number. Green says, hey, there's actually an increase. So also the dark blue, the darker the blue shows that there's more and more demand for this type of property in this situation, and it gives you recommendations on how to increase and decrease. We're completely aware there's things like length of stay, that you've got special discounts, but the idea is that we give you a baseline that you can work with, and that you see when demand is changing, when it's increasing, decreasing, and you might know particular patterns in regards to seasonality. You know the big events that are happening, or unfortunately not happening in the moment, but there are things happening in your market that you might not be aware of, and this tool helps you really pinpoint the price down to not a penny but a pound or other local currency to help you really optimize your pricing. So, and then we said we talk about benchmarking, because after you've done all these exercises, either if it's for your own purpose or because you're sitting down with an owner, you want to actually understand how well you're doing. Again, you go in. There is in MarketMinder, there's a functionality called top properties. So it provides you up to 15 properties, again with the filters that you set in the region that you set. In some areas, we can go down to a zip code or a neighborhood in a city, and then we return revenue, average daily rate, and number of reviews, for example. And this would help you understand how you're fitting in these other properties. Again, you can compare if, for example, the top 2 are sea view, but you don't have a sea view property, maybe you want to look at properties in this list that you feel are more comparable to yours. And ideally, it will again trigger action where you say, hold on, the average daily rate seems to be fairly different to what I'm creating, and this is why their revenue seems to be higher or lower. And ideally, that will again trigger actions that you can take and optimize your listing to get the maximum out of it.
So I don't know if you mentioned there, did you say you can read the reviews?
No, you can't read the reviews. It's just the number of reviews. But again, you could click. You can click on it and move out and go to the listing. So here on the right, the number 2, where it shows the blue Airbnb button, you can click on that, go directly to the listing and see that. But down below, you see number of reviews. So that in some cases, you can see that fairly similar properties, some have more, some have less reviews. Mm-hmm. And you could suggest to someone that maybe they should be a bit more active in reaching out to their guests after their stay, and kind of make sure that you're getting these positive reviews that you deserve, and that then drive additional bookings.
I was also thinking from a reviews perspective, I always find it really interesting to look at the kind of competitor reviews to see, you know, what their guests are saying they do particularly well or not particularly well even, because that can also give you like that competitive advantage. You know, if you're missing out on something that guests really like, adding that to your description, adding it to your photos to say that you also do it is very useful. And likewise, if they say something's particularly bad, that could be something that you could be checking that you're not doing as a property owner.
So we have. So I mentioned earlier that we're actually just talking about one product that we provide, MarketMinder, this SaaS solution that's available online. There are two more products that we offer. One is an API, which means all the data and more from what we've seen today is available in pure numeric numbers. So if you have a system, Bookster, you're one of the consumers of that data, you can pull this data directly out and analyze this. Majority of people don't have that. And then there's a third element, which is enterprise level reports, which means they are actually just Excel reports, but they're very, very granular. You can have, for example, a certain report down to a property level. So you get the performance of every single property day by day with amenities and everything in an Excel sheet. So if you typically larger organizations or real estate investors use that type of data to kind of get a more granular view, whereas MarketMinder has the benefit, it's visual, it's very easy to understand, you can play around with the filters, whereas an Excel sheet might be, I mean, for me, it's a depressing piece of information to look at. No, it would frustrate me. I'd rather look at something like this, and it's much easier. I'm a visual person. But obviously, someone who's a data analyst or a full-blown revenue manager, they're really the people who really appreciate this granular number-based information. What else did I want to say? Yeah, exactly. And then there's one report which I think we're discontinuing, which is the review report, where we have all the reviews basically in one big Excel sheet. So this is something that you could do as if you're bored with the book you're reading, you could read all the reviews of your competitors, for example, and find out what they're doing well or what they're not doing well, and then act upon that.
I find it gripping. I think it's really interesting. Actually, seeing that is interesting.
It's there. If you're interested, it's there. Sandy, I'm just reading Sandy's comment, Airbnb. Exactly. So Sandy, thanks so much for your comment. You mentioned it. Airbnb sent these recommendations. HomeAway/Vrbo, VRBO, do something similar. And I don't want to downplay the advantage they have for the data that they're sitting on, but there's a couple of thoughts that I have to that. One is they're obviously looking at themselves, and they have a very good view on the properties that they themselves see. But then for the bookings that don't come in through their platform, they might lack the analytics that we have. The other thing is, in sales, for example, you never let a sales guy define his commission plan or his goals for a very good reason. And we see ourselves, we're an independent party. We want to democratize this industry. We want to provide data and information to anyone in this industry. Like I said earlier, owner or an enterprise with 10 or 40,000 properties. And sorry, I lost my thread here. Where was I going with this? It's 50 minutes of enterprises. Exactly. Sorry. No. So we're an independent data source, which means that for us it really doesn't matter if a market is performing or not performing, if rates are up or down. It doesn't make any difference to us. Whereas a portal is obviously in between the owner and the guest. And there's a bit of a disconnect in the interest. Your interest and portal's interest are not always aligned, because they also want to attract guests. In the US, there was the the theme with price parity, that you by contract were forced to have certain rates, and that just shows that a portal more or less has their own interests. And in our vision, it doesn't hurt to work with someone who doesn't have a horse in the race, a dog in the race, horse in the race. And so we see ourselves as completely impartial and ideally as the most accurate company in this industry. So Joanne and Tony, interesting future demand analysis charts for Ireland right now. Midterm is showing higher booked occupancy but low median rate. Just gone to country level, COVID lockdown, so I can see it collapsing. Well, I hope it comes back up. Okay, I think we're through. Okay. Another important thing to say thank you to everyone and to kind of attract and motivate you to use the tool. First of all, it's important to know you can sign into MarketMinder at no cost. It's a freemium model, which means you register and you can look at the market of Santa Monica at the full tool, all functionality, which means we're not generating any revenue from property managers in Santa Monica. They're the lucky ones. But this gives you a complete overview of what this tool can and what it cannot do. And then it's based on a per market basis, which means if you're in London, you can acquire the market of London. If you say, hey, actually, I want the full country, you would talk to one of our sales guys or consultants to get a country overview. You can have a global overview. You can just dive down into one niche market. We start at $20 per month for the smallest markets. Pricing depends on the size of the market. And to say thank you for joining us and to listening and giving us your time. We offer you 25% discount for the first 3 months. This offer stands until the end of the year. If you type in Bookster 25, capital letters, very important, when you sign up, you should get 25% of the list rate deducted. And I hope this was interesting. I hope it was educational. I hope it gave you some inspiration on what you can do. And if you're interested to reach out, my email is here, florian.stich, S-T-I-C-H, @airdna.co. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I'd love to chat with you and find out more about your business.
Well, that sounds perfect. I'm just going to go back to our slides. First of all, I think we've actually covered almost, I think, pretty much all the questions that we've got coming through. I would just like to summarize really the main points that you talked about there for what you can actually do based on the features and the graphs that you were showing. So I took note of choosing or discounting the location of a property that you're going to work in, or you're going to buy, or you're going to find owners in. Deciding what amenities or features you're going to have in a property. So looking at your deposit, your cleaning, your amenities as a whole, like a hot tub, or whether or not you've included your kettle and your toaster. Adjusting your prices up or down depending on certain behaviours that are happening in the market, and building relationships with your owners, especially if you are a big agency or a medium-sized agency, you're working with owners. It's really important to have a really good relationship with them, and being able to look at this data and find trends and have that conversation with your owners, I think, is really important. So did I miss anything there, Flo?
No, the only one who missed something was me, due to time restraints and also kind of keeping this to a human format. There's still more information in the tool. We would never ever be able to squeeze this into an hour or two. There's other elements that we could have talked about in regards to occupancy and percentiles to kind of identify outliers in kind of to make sure that you're not competing with amateurs, someone who's completely overpricing or underpricing. There's still more information, and I can just only recommend to anyone, like I said, it's free, register, sign up, look at MarketMinder, spend some time. It will ideally generate some ideas and questions, and then me or the rest of the AirDNA team is here to help you out and to answer any questions, and ideally also manage to get out of this mess of COVID Corona crisis. People want to
you weren't going to
travel.
mention it.
I said I promised I wouldn't want to manage, but I think it's a good positive note at the end. People want to travel, and its vacation rental market is doing comparably fine and will be one of the winners once we're through this mess.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Okay, as far as the event is concerned, let's call that a wrap. What I will do after this event, the video will automatically be collated. I will put it together in a blog with all the links to the various topics that Flo has talked about today, and I'll send it out an email to everybody. Obviously, if you want to get in touch with me or with Flo, you're more than welcome to, and we'd be happy to answer any questions on today's topic or anything else that you'd like to. Sandy's asking a quick question there, sneaking one in there. Just need to know, Flo, how we get travellers from your country.
Your country, is that Germany, or are you assuming my accent? I don't know. Is that the question,
so Sandy's in Spain.
Ah, okay. Sandy's been in Spain. Oh, Sandy, send me a message afterwards, or find me on LinkedIn, Flo Stich AirDNA, STICH, and we'll have a chat. I'm not sure if I can bring you clients from my country, whatever that country is.
Let's see. Okay, we'll have an event next month. It's not been actually finalised what the date will be, but obviously I will send out the invitations to everybody, and hopefully you can come along. I hope you all enjoyed the event. I certainly found it really interesting and very useful. I hope you did too. And yes, keep in touch, stay safe, and we'll be in touch soon.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kelly, for the invitation. Thanks everyone for joining.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye, everybody.